All right, coming in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. TNHoller.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that good stuff. We also have Hollers hollering across the state. Thanks to your support. Chip in a few bucks a month and get one of these sweet Holler hats like the one I'm wearing. Shout out to Elisa Parker. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, do it through her. If you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld is who you should reach out to. And if you need insurance, Peggy Hubbard is very supportive of us. All right, today we're talking to a Shelby County, Memphis candidate for county commission. Lena Chipman is here. Lena, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's Lena, actually.
Lena,
So
I am sorry.
pronounced like that's two N.
I grew up with
I hear
Alina
a lot of different
spelled this
ones. So
way. I grew up with Alina spelled that way, so that was
hmm
why I went there.
yeah,
Lena,
yeah, no worries.
Lena Chipman. So, Lena, tell me, what are the issues that are motivating you to run for county commission in Shelby County?
Oh goodness, there's so many. And first of all, let me thank you for having me on the show here today. Really appreciate that. Big fan of the Holler
Oh,
and the
thank
things
you.
that you do in Nashville. So I really appreciate you being here and letting me come on and share my message. So when I look at Shelby County, right, and I've lived in Memphis for 40 years. So I've been around for a while. I know I don't look like I would live in Memphis for 40 years, but I've been around for a while, and I've lived across the various zip codes in the county and in the city, right? So I've lived, right on the edge of Germantown. I've lived in Hickory Hill. I've lived in North Memphis. I've lived, the university area. Now I live in Central Gardens in Midtown. And one thing that I've noticed as the years have gone on is that some of the corruption and accountability issues have gotten worse in local government, where we have people who get elected to positions and then, for example, get plea out on a tax fraud charge from the commission. We have seen issues in terms of sheriffs interacting with ICE, claiming that they're not. We've seen issues with the MPD interacting with ICE, claiming that they're not. And so I see all of these issues arise, and I think, well, as a progressive, as a member of a marginalized community, as a transgender woman, right, these are places where it's really important to have voices in the room and to hold people accountable, right? Like that's really, really important. And fighting against that corruption is really kind of the key element of how we move into some of the other issues that are really important to me and to people in my community and people that I talk to, right? But ICE and corruption are the top ones I hear from voters, and that aligns with my message because I don't have existing connections to outside organizations, to existing party apparatus, right? I'm running in because I want to hold people accountable, want to hold groups accountable when they are engaging in corruption. I want to hold groups accountable when they are not doing the things that the constituents are demanding and they're acting in their own self-interest. And then beyond that, when we look at that, like economic and social justice are really important things to me. So that includes improving transit, that includes establishing a functional education system. Obviously, the dysfunction in the Memphis Shelby County schools is not something that is private, right? Everyone knows about it. It's made national news. This is a place where the commission has a role, right? Because they have that appropriations authority. And so helping build a strong functional education system is really important to me. I have an 8-year-old who goes to public schools, and obviously I want them to be as good as they can be. And then beyond that, we look at criminal justice reform, right? So that's another top issue for me. We want to look at it and we want to say, hey, how can we make sure that we are not incarcerating people for crimes that are things that we've asserted are crimes, right? We want to make sure that we're targeting the most violent crimes that exist and solving those crimes, right? Not just sitting on rape kits, for example, for an excruciatingly long time, not just running around with the Tennessee Highway Patrol and picking up people on minor traffic offenses. If we're looking for pretextual stops, but focusing on the things that are actually impacting people's lives in a negative way. And then address root causes of crime as well, right? Because a lot of crimes that people see, the drag racing is obviously something people talk a lot about in Memphis. That's something where you've got people making bad choices because they're bored and they want to do something fun, and we can redirect that energy into something valuable, like for example, the new motorsports park, right? That's being built out or rather rebuilt in the Millington area. That's something that we can do to really redirect that desire to show off, right? Redirect it from crime to something that allows people to like win awards, right? They go up through a car racing, for example, path, right? And then be able to show off, win awards, and build tourism and build tax base. So in the end, right, to summarize my lengthy answer to that, right, we're talking about accountability, we're talking about education, we're talking about kicking ICE out of the city, we're talking about social and economic justice, right? Those are the things that matter to me a lot and that ultimately seem to matter to my constituents.
What's the latest with the task force there? Is it a presence in everyday life? Are they just hanging out on Beale Street? What are they doing?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we can divide some of the task force activities into really two parts, right? There's the part that is the ICE part, right? So that is ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, deputized agents like IRS agents, right? Which are now working effectively as part of ICE. And the Tennessee Highway Patrol, right? And then local police when they participate in that, so MPD and Shelby County Sheriffs. And then there's the National Guard piece. And the National Guard piece is the one that gets a lot of noise. It's like, oh, we deployed the National Guard to Memphis to fight crime. What the National Guard does is that they walk around the streets. You know, they hang around Beale Street, they take pictures. I've seen them getting tours of the Edge District near downtown, which is where I work, where they're just taking pictures. They walk around Cooper Young and patrol that area, basically just walking around doing nothing, but they are intimidating people, right? Because, you know, people walking around in combat fatigues carrying weapons tend to be a little bit scary, particularly for those of us who live in the middle of the city and are not expecting to see armed people walking around in combat fatigues in our neighborhoods. So that's the National Guard piece. They're not really affecting people's lives on a day-to-day basis other than negatively impacting the economy, right? Because obviously when you want to go out for a drink, you don't want to be stopped by people in combat fatigues carrying rifles, right? Like that's not on anyone's top of their list that they want to do. Where the other side of the equation, and this is where the great deal of damage comes from, is the ICE side of that Memphis safe, big sarcasm quotes, task force. And so that group is principally targeting areas that have significant immigrant populations. Note that I'm not saying anything about whether or not those are documented or undocumented immigrants because they don't seem to care. So an area that they're focusing a lot on right now is actually part of my district, and that is Berkeley, and that is on the eastern side of the city, right? So it's north of Walnut Grove, so people are familiar with Memphis, right? It's north, it's the summer area, right? HSI ICE has been out there harassing people and performing pretextual stops along with THP and local police. And so they'll pull people over claiming that there's a headlight out, and then they will do everything in their power, potentially with that mobile Fortify app that doesn't actually successfully identify who people are, to try to effectively kidnap people. And so there's a lot of the activity from the groups that are mutual aid groups that are working to document this is in the Berkeley area, right? And so there are a lot of protests are up there as well because that's where they're hanging out. But they're spread out all over the city. That just happens to be an area of significant concentration for them. I will note that it's important that they're not going around solving crimes. I have no doubt that there is some work that's being done behind the scenes between FBI, possibly with TBI, that is helping clear crimes, right, and helping to solve extant crimes and serve warrants and things like that. But the data shows that the majority of people who are being pulled over by the unsafe task force are being pulled over for traffic offenses, right? Okay, like, great. I'm glad that you're pulling people over for having a broken tail light out, right? I'm not actually glad. That was me being sarcastic. But that's not really helping the city. It's not helping protect anybody. And it's usually just a pretext by which they can then try to hand people over to ICE. And again, ICE, as they've demonstrated across the country, does not care if you are documented, does not care if you're undocumented, does not care if you are a citizen. If they decide they want to make your life hell, they're going to do it. And then it's going to be up to you to go contact a lawyer to be able to get you out. And that is deeply unconstitutional. It's inappropriate. We don't need them in our city because they're not helping. They're making things worse.
It seems like they're also taking credit for like any crime that gets solved,
Yes.
even if it would have been solved whether or not they existed. So,
Yeah.
there's just this whole like propaganda push to make us feel like this Memphis Safe Task Force is responsible for all good things and not responsible for any of the bad things.
Yeah, because crime was on a downward trend. Just to
Exactly.
follow up on that, crime was on
Right,
a
right.
downward
Crime was
trend.
already going down. They
Yeah,
came in and
yeah,
now taking credit for everything. Exactly.
absolutely. Well,
You
the
mentioned
guy in charge would be
education.
behind
Sorry.
that.
You mentioned education.
Mhm.
There's a big push right now for the, I guess, state to take over Memphis Shelby County
Yeah.
School Board. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think Nashville needs to stop messing around with Memphis, and Nashville, in this case, not the city, but the legislature in
Right.
Nashville. Cameron Sexton needs to stop messing around with Memphis, and people like Brent Taylor and Mark White need to stop messing around with Memphis, right? We have elections for a reason, right? We elected a school board. I have not inconsiderable problems with the current sitting school board, as do many people I talk to when I'm out canvassing, as do many people I know. So okay, elections have consequences. The answer to that and the appropriate approach would be for the state to enable recalls, right? And at that point, people would say, wow, the school board is doing a terrible job. Let's recall them and put some new people in. The solution to it is not having an unaccountable set of managers put into place that have complete control, basically neutralizing the elected, because that neutralizes our voice. Because they could say, oh, you have a voice. You can elect people to the state legislature. Great. I can't elect enough people to the state legislature just because of the way the districts are. I don't even talk about gerrymandering. I'm just talking about the physical nature of the state to be able to have any effective influence on that. So ultimately, it is a state takeover. And they'll say, oh, well, we're putting in local people. Okay, yes, but they're local people selected by Cameron Sexton and Bill Lee, which means that they're not going to be the local people that the people in the city would want. They're going to be people that are going to follow that very specific extremist agenda, right? And I'll just be blunt, that extremist white supremacist agenda, right? So it's not, as they're going to say, it's not oh, we're just helping the local school. It is an aggressive state takeover of the school board. And that's something on the commission that I'm going to do everything I can do to push back against. And I know there will be snarky statements of, well, you can't do anything about it. What you do is immaterial. Well, fun fact, the county commission controls budgetary authority within the county. So there is, in fact, a great deal that the commission can, in fact, do to ensure that whatever this board of managers, which seems sadly inevitable. And obviously, many people I know are sending letters, making phone calls to say, hey, don't do this, don't want this. But the reality is that when this gets put into place, the last line of defense against whatever they want to do is going to be the commission because we control the budget. So we want to make sure that we get people on the commission who A, understand that, and B, are willing to use that authority to make sure that Memphis students come first, Memphis students are protected, and that this extremist agenda does not make its way into our schools.
That makes sense. One of the other issues that I think has come up before the Shelby County Commission, that I just wanted to get your take on before I
Mhm.
let you go here, and I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this stuff. This is a video that we took of hang on, I don't know if I have it queued up. I might not have it queued up, so I might just have to ask
Okay,
you about it. But basically,
sure.
we asked Memphis Mayor Paul Young and Brent Taylor about XAI creating jobs in
Hmm.
Memphis, and basically Brent Taylor told us he doesn't give a shit if they create jobs for locals in Memphis. And then Paul Young basically said that he never really understood that was part of the promise for XAI in general, which is confusing because it's right there on their website that they kind of promised to hire local. We're going to create hundreds of jobs. And, as far as we could tell, we don't know a ton of local Memphians who have been hired to work at XAI. So what do you think about Senator Brent Taylor saying he doesn't give a shit who they hire, and then Mayor Paul Young generally saying that it wasn't really his understanding that they were ever going to hire Memphians?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not surprised that Brent Taylor said that, right? Brent Taylor doesn't give a shit about anything other than himself and a white supremacist project, right? So I'm not surprised that that's his take on it, honestly. So a lot of the promise of XAI, and I'm going to talk a little bit about data science. So I work in technology. I'm actually at my campaign headquarters, which is my office at a co-work space, right? I've been a technology consultant for 10 years now, right? So I go around and I sell solutions to companies. I design and then sell the solutions to them. But before that, I've held practically every job in tech, right? Like I've gone from help desk, I've run data centers, I've built data centers. So I'm very familiar with how you build software in the modern era. I'm very doing it right now, right? Like I usually joke, I've got my software development tools open right now. I'm behind the screen. But when we think about how many jobs can be created by a data center, right? The answer is maybe 5 or 6, right? Even for the largest data centers. And let me explain why. When you have a data center, it's basically, if you've ever been inside of one or you're not really familiar what they are, they're basically lots and lots of racks of a whole bunch of computers stacked up on top of each other, right? And you can lay them out in different ways. You can cool them in different ways, like you can use air cooling, like Google typically likes to do. You can drain the aquifer because it's cheaper, like Elon Musk likes to do. You can power them in different ways, right? Like you can use solar, like Google and Microsoft like to do, which is very well suited for our environment, or you can set up a whole bunch of unpermitted gas turbines, like Elon Musk likes to do, because again, it's cheaper and he doesn't really care. You don't need a whole lot of people once you've built all that out, right? Once you have assembled the racks, you've moved the servers in, you've wired up all the electricity to it, you've connected all of the various data systems to it. All you need is security, maybe janitorial services, maybe, because people typically aren't going back into the server
And
farms,
energy.
right? So yeah, and you need like someone to like manage if something breaks, right? To like pull out a server and put a server back in,
Right.
make sure that if like something gets damaged, like a tree falls on a line or something, you can go fix that. And then you need a whole lot of power, right? And a whole lot of, well,
Right.
if you're Elon Musk, a whole lot of water, right, to cool the data
Right.
center. Now, again, that water doesn't like disappear. The reason why we say the water is used is because it goes through a cooling loop, right? And so at that point, the temperature is raised. It goes through things that are not intended for potable water use, and then it has to get dumped. It has to be treated as gray water, right? So it has to be either dumped as part of a gray water release, or it needs to go into a treatment plant. But it can't be given back to the MLGW water system for us to drink from, right? Because would you really want to be drinking water that's gone through treatment processes
No, of
so it
course
becomes
not.
it's less corrosive? Yeah. So in the end, these data centers basically produce no jobs, right? They use a lot of the resources and infrastructure in the community, but they don't generate a lot of jobs because you don't have to sit next to the computer where you build your software. I work in Google's platform and in Microsoft's platform typically. I work on data centers that are located all over the world. I live here in Memphis. I've never had to run something on a computer in Memphis to support operations in Memphis because
Do
that's just
you
not how the internet works.
so let me ask you this. Do you think that are you generally speaking in favor of having data centers in Memphis, or are you sympathetic with the people who are opposed to, the resources it's using and the pollution it's putting out in the air? What is it a good thing? How is it benefiting Memphis?
Yeah, the answer is that it's not really benefiting Memphis, right? Like you could make an argument. I don't think it's a persuasive one, but you could make an argument that having XAI here is like a lift, right? And it improves the brand of the city. But given that XAI has, and the chatbot it creates, Grok, has generated CSAM, right? It's generated non-consensual
Sure
pictures.
has. Yeah.
Yeah, non-consensual naked pictures and sexualized pictures of women, and it does this for paying subscribers. So he's made money off of it, given that it supports the algorithms used by X, formerly known as Twitter, to bend public opinion in the direction of his particular extractive and, let's be honest, white supremacist, and if I'm being really honest, fascist objectives. His eliminationist rhetoric towards my people, right, towards transgender people, all of these things taint the brand, right? Like I'm sure everyone's seen Teslas. They're running around with the sticker of like, bought it before Elon went crazy. Well, XAI is the very definition of Elon and his current whatever he's doing right now, his current fascist project, right? So it's
Right.
not helping Memphis. It does not improve the brand. What it does is it makes us look like a city that doesn't have any self-respect. That we're a city, Memphis and Shelby County is a place where you can come in and you can build whatever you want, and we'll just be like, cool, thank you for the tax dollars, right?
Right.
Which we're not even getting anything special out of that. Like one of the things I want to do on the commission is create special taxing regimes specifically for data centers and say, hey, if you're going to come in and you're being a good member of the community, and I don't mean by sponsoring Starry Nights so that you can claim that you are a good member of the community. And I don't mean by giving in-kind donations to the schools so you can clean up certain schools and do some beautification project and say, oh, yes, we're here for all of the children that our chatbot is making pictures of. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is like a data center that's going to support like local startups. It's going to support local businesses. It's going to be powered by solar. It's going to operate in a way that is not going to cause harm. So that means no gas turbines, for example. That means no drawing in tremendous amounts of water, because you can cool these things with air. It just costs more money to do it that way. All of those things would be appropriate things and appropriate ways for someone to be an appropriate member of the community, right? But setting up a giant generative AI data center to create the garbage that Grok creates, the AI slop, as we call it, that doesn't help Memphis in any way, right? Like it poisons kids in Boxtown, it raises our electric rates. As we get more of these things, right, assuming the Senate bill that's currently being run by Brent Taylor to prevent more utility rates, cost raises from the use of AI systems and other data centers, assuming that bill doesn't pass, right? Like it's just going to keep raising our rates because by the demand for electricity is going to keep going up. And in the end, what are we getting out of it? We're not getting jobs. We're not getting a halo effect where people are like, oh, yes, I definitely want to run my startup here, right?
They also just announced yesterday, TVA, I think, approved double the power for XAI, which is why they're taking over the board, which is why Senator Haggerty wants to go run the board. All these things are working together. And I think, at the end of the day, I think it goes back to, people running to hold these people accountable and pushing back. So I appreciate that you're running. Where can people check out your campaign?
Yeah, great. Glad. Yeah. So www.lenachipman.com. Also, Lena Leads Out Loud on all socials. So except for Twitter, we don't do Twitter because we don't support Nazis. But you can find us on Blue Sky. Lena Leads Out Loud.
I definitely respect and appreciate that outlook. We're still on there just because I have sort of come down on the side of like, I want to be there to fight the fight. But I do absolutely accept the criticism of being on there and supporting who I agree he's that, that was a big howl on the inauguration night, in my opinion.
It absolutely was. Yes.
And so,
one last thing I want to mention too, a place where you can find us. If you go to my website, we have a Discord server. So I am the rare candidate that wants to hear from you all the time. Join the Discord, join our live streams, right? And message me directly, right? If you have any questions, things you like, things you don't like, I want to hear from you, right? Like that's critically important for me to hear from constituents, hear from people who are stakeholders in the community. Just, don't be transphobic and be generally respectful.
It seems like a not a lot to ask. All right. Well, Lena, thank you for jumping on here. Thanks for talking to us about your campaign, and keep us posted as things progress.
Thank you so much. Again, appreciate you for having me on today. Like I said, everybody go check out the Holler. It's awesome. It's definitely worth a read.
Appreciate that. Take care.
Thank you so much. You as well. Bye-bye.